Those of you that have been following me on these YouTubes will have noticed that I've referred quite a few times to the changing of the ages, the yugas, the epochs, as you might call them. Most people would know this as the movement into the Age of Aquarius, because most people are familiar with that now, and particularly because of the song, you know, that great song, I'm not going to sing it for you, but you know, the song in Hair. But the original idea came in 1887 by a woman called Madame Blavatsky, who was part of the Theosophy movement. She came up with the idea that we are moving from one age into another, from this age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. And she was a bit like me in that she was kind of, had a foot between spiritualist ideas. Theosophy is not strictly spiritualist, but there's this kind of an influence there between spiritualist ideas and Eastern ideas. And so, like me, she must have had a lot of contact with the East. She certainly travelled India a great deal and wrote about Indian stuff a lot, but interpreted it in her own way, and often I'm afraid, I feel, made a number of mistakes and misconceptions that are pushed forward into this age. Things like the chakras and some of the things that she talked about, she got it wrong. But never mind, I'll talk about that another time. But she coined this idea of moving from Pisces into Aquarius. This is a Western version of an Indian idea of the movement of the yugas. So from a Western perspective, moving to the age of Aquarius means moving from a time of Pisces, which is much more emotional sign. Pisces is a sign of illusion, isn't it? Because it's ruled by Neptune. And it's also a sign that's connected much more with religion and conformity in some ways. And moving into the age of Aquarius, like a switch from brain sides too, as we do this, into right thinking brain, as we come into the imaginative sign of Aquarius, which is ruled by Uranus. And being an air sign, it's much more expansive, more open, more imaginative in some respects, and all the qualities that you'd associate with, you know, the star sign Aquarius. Now, so that's Madame Blavatsky's take on it, and it's quite a nice thought. But she was basing it primarily on Eastern ideas, I believe, which is the idea of the yugas. Now, the yugas is a word for an epoch, a time of ages, and the one we're in at the moment is the age of Kali Yuga. Now, there are many conflicting ideas about these yugas and their timings, because in India they think in great vast periods of time, great long periods of time, which they judge in terms of ages of the gods and so forth. And the ages of the gods, as it were, the demigods, a year of a demigod is 360 years. Equivalent of a human god. So you start saying it's so many years, demigod years, and so forth, which means that the yugas can last periods such as, you know, many millions of years sometimes. I mean, the duration of some of them, for example, the main one is the truth yuga. That's the one we attain to, you know, and according to some systems, the Satya yuga, the age of truth, that is the ultimate one to get to, the one where man is enlightened in an enlightened sort of state, is 1,728,000 years. Okay, and the one just before that, the Treta Yuga, is 1,296 years. Huge periods of time, and the age that we're moving into, the Dwapara Yuga, is 8,600 and 8,600 hang on, how many? 864,000 years. Sorry, I'm forgetting my numbers, but they're hard numbers to remember. But you know, so it's a shorter period, but we have these vast tracts of time, and we at the moment are in the Kali Yuga, which is again a very long period of history. It's supposed to have started at the time of the birth of Krishna. Now, according to the Vedas, Krishna, well, I think it was the death of Krishna, I think, was it the birth? I'm not sure, actually. Yeah, it would have been from Krishna's time, which was 3104 BCE. So it's a long time ago. And that period of the Kali Yuga is to last for 432,000 years. Okay, so there's a lot of numbers there, all right. But basically, they're long periods of time, very long periods of time. And as we move from one yuga to another, it's not a sudden switch over. You know, it's not suddenly we're in Dark Age and then we're in Golden Age. It's a sort of a slow movement, like a light being turned up slowly. And as the influence of the negative period of the Kali Yuga falls away, so the brighter period, and we're coming into the Dwapara Yuga now, not the ultimate Golden Age, but the Dwapara Yuga, which is a lot better than the Kali Yuga. I'll tell you about those in a moment. Gradually, the light of that age begins to increase as the light of the Kali Yuga fades. Now, a lot of people still believe we've got many, many, many tens of thousands of years to go in the Dark Age. And others say, and in particular now I'm going to refer to, some of you might have read Yogananda, who wrote Autobiography of a Yogi. If you haven't read it, go and read it because it's brilliant. But there's his teacher, Sri Yukswara, I can never pronounce his name. He argued that he was a great astrologer, you know, and he argued that the problem was that we lived in an age where Kali Yuga had become so dark that we actually forgot the exact timings of the Yuga. The ignorance of Kali Yuga even made us forget about we're even in the Yugas, and the astrology became distorted. He worked it all out, believing that the Earth actually had a twin star, that we were a twin star, and by working out the calculations with a twin star, that all the numbers started to fall into a different order. Others might argue that maybe he was talking about this Planet X idea, that there's maybe another star that is not a star, but another planet in an elliptical orbit. Another talk, that one. But basically, he said that we're pretty much coming in to the age of Dwapara Yuga, that we're actually on the turnover period between the Dark Age of Kali Yuga and the New Age. Now, just describe to you briefly what the Kali Yuga is all about. It's the age of darkness and ignorance, really. This is the time when, you know, people are full of sin and they lack virtue and they're slaves to their passions, basically. That's the idea. This is the time when the tamasic things dominate. Tamasic is one of the gunas. It means sort of like all the dark energy of things. Like meat eating would be tamasic because it's a darker, heavier energy. Those heavy depression and things like that are all tamasic. It's like a heavy form of energy, spiritual energy in a way, you could call it. And during this time, societies falls apart, people become liars and hypocrites, there's much more war, people lose the knowledge of the scriptures and all those type of things. They lose the knowledge, the ancient knowledge of enlightenment, and they eat bad food, they pollute the environment, it says, and, you know, wealth becomes more important, and wealth becomes in the hands of the few. You know, doesn't that describe our age? And this was being written, you know, in the Vedas years and years and years and years ago, way before the modern age, you know. And during this time, actually, it says that people's lifespan, the maximum most people can ever reach to, is 100 years. and as the Yuga increases, the age in the Kali Yuga, people will only reach the age of 20 years. But we actually do live longer now than we did before, didn't we? So, you know, these ages are quite interesting because in each yuga they believe people live long periods of time. I mean, in the coming yuga, the Dwapara Yuga, this is the time. It means pair or two. The Dwapara Yuga, and this is when people become perhaps a little bit less tainted by the negative qualities that we have. It's an age of energy, so we will invent things that are energy wise. We may be able to understand again the energy of consciousness, which is something I've mentioned before. These would be marvellous discoveries to find these things, and certainly we're on the lookout for new forms of energy nowadays, aren't we? The scientists are on it, but then perhaps we're going to find new forms of energy that we have ourselves, you know, because in India they believe that we have like the nadis in our body, like energy channels, and through those energy channels runs this power of prana, which is linked to consciousness. And it's not some ephemeral nothingness thing, but it has real power itself, the power to materialize, the power to heal, the power to change events and circumstances around you. It has the power to make things happen, right? There's some pretty bizarre ideas I'm putting there. But our bodies, by purifying them, we actually change the world around us through our work upon those energies. Dwapara Yuga, I can't say that word, is a time when we may begin to harness those things again, you know. And there will be less fighting, but still some. And as the ages change over, so we go through rocky times as there is a changeover from one yuga to the next. And in this age, this coming age, people are supposed to possess a better quality of youth and things like that. And the average lifespan of humans would actually, they say, would increase to double what we were experiencing in Kali Yuga, which we should live to 200 years. Maybe that's possible, just with science alone. There's no reason we know why the human body should die, and they still can't work out, you know, what is it that stops us working. So according to these ideas, it is the astrology of the era we're living in, the energy fields that are influencing us from the cosmos at this time, from the sun itself, and perhaps from the dual sun or the whatever, you know, that is determining the time we will live on this earth. And just beyond that, I mean, these are now going thousands of years ahead, tens of thousands of years ahead. The ages after this, which is outside of our, way outside of our lifetime, if indeed we even in our lifetime can get into the next yuga, is the Treta Yuga, which is it's the sort of third age of the yugas, really, and it's coming towards the final age there, which is the Satya Yuga, the age of truth. So it's beginning to pick up those energies of those times where wars become infrequent, where the weather will change in its extremities. Oceans and deserts form in that time, but not as much as they do in the ages we have here. And apparently in that time people become slightly smaller in size compared to the Satya Yuga, which is the age I'm going to talk about in a minute, which follows the ultimate age where men were giants. Now these all sound pretty crazy ideas. People in this time, in the Treta Yuga, are supposed to live, you die at a young age, you'd be 1,000, and you're supposed to live to 10,000 years old. Okay, so there's some pretty hard things to take on in the way we understand things now, but perhaps in those ages people understand the nature of reality slightly different. You know, our assumption is that this body is real, that this body will die at 85 or something years old or whatever it might be, you know, if we're lucky. And, you know, maybe as we change our consciousness, maybe, you know, the bodily state changes completely and we will live long periods of time. Because in the Treta, in the final one, the Great Golden Age, the Satya Yuga, people are supposed to live for up to 100,000 years. You know, an impossibility, we think to ourselves. But do we understand the very nature of the possibilities of how humans could exist? You know, we've only seen the history of mankind living within the Dark Age. Maybe something will happen to allow us to extend our life vastly, or it will naturally extend its life vastly. And these things are supposed to have been in the millions of years in the past and can be again. Who knows what things were around before? Because in the age of Satya Yuga, mankind does not build. So there will be very few things to show that they've been in that age, because they live by the power of consciousness. They live by, they become saintly, enlightened people that do not require houses and technologies and things like that. And they say that the human form became gigantic in those times. They were kind of handsome, honest, useful, vigorous, erudite, virtuous. You know, they were big, healthy human beings. You would have to be, wouldn't you, to live 100,000 years? And that in that time people were enlightened, you know, and that nobody required riches. The weather of the earth was very pleasant, and everybody was happy on those times. So that's why it's the golden age. There was no religion. There was no disease or fear of anything, and human lifespan, as I said, was very long, and people lived in and out of the state of enlightenment, of samadhi. And that's the age that the earth is heading towards. Now in terms of evolution, that makes sense to me, that, you know, The body will evolve in order to sustain higher and higher consciousness. And why not? Perhaps we can live to those ages if we allow the Earth to live that long. But we're kind of in a difficult position ourselves, aren't we? Because here we are. We're thinking about the golden age and when it's going to come. But we're still thinking in terms of external, aren't we? We're thinking, oh, you know, all these terrible things that go on at the moment. We've got all the people worry about, you know, Donald Trump and things, and people worry about the way the world order is, and people worry about the way we're being destroyed by commerce, and we're wrecking the world, and we're destroying all these things. But they say that any of these ages can actually dawn within a person, that we're not necessarily dependent upon the external world to experience these ages. Because in fact, you know, let's face it, we could be in a fix, couldn't we? If we're stuck in the middle of Kali Yuga, the world around is going to be pretty rotten for a long time. And if we're lucky and things change and the golden age comes, we're still thinking of outside there, somewhere out there, there's the happiness. But really, you know, in order to really come to an understanding, we have to think about the idea that heaven doesn't lie outside, you know. Heaven is within us, you know. We tend to live externally. We always seek everything outside ourselves, don't we? Think, oh, I'll be happy if I'm married, says the young girl or the young boy, you know. Or I'll be happy when I've got some money, then everything will be fine. Or I'll be happy when I get my health back. You know, all those things are all kind of material things. But you'll only ever really be happy when you've stopped looking outside to find the happiness and find the happiness within yourself. It's like we're trying all the time, aren't we? We're trying to look out there, it's out there. But really, we need to live internally. We need to focus our attention back into ourselves and live from the inside out rather than the outside in, as it were, because we always think it's outside. Because you think about it, anything good outside of yourself is still outside of yourself. You can't actually possess it, can you? It's away from you. You cannot be it, you know, you cannot, it will always be subject to deterioration. Even in the highest of yugas, even in the Satya Yuga, anything outside of yourself is still outside of yourself. But if you've attained consciousness within, then you've possessed it, because you are it. Do you see what I mean? It's kind of difficult to explain to people, but, you know, any age, that is what the Satya Yuga would be about attaining that consciousness state where you realize the outside and the inside are the same thing. That's why the power of consciousness comes to such fruition and flowers in those times, because you realize that you can change the world around you by your very thought, by your very power of consciousness. And the way to do that is to understand that what's happening is happening within, and trust and understand the power of within. You know, not just think, oh, you know, I'm within, you know, I'm all conscious and I'm all awake. No, you have huge power within yourself. And this is what I think the yugas kind of hint at when you read about them, and you can go and look them up and find out some more about this, because what we talk about in the yugas is really the possibilities of human consciousness, which can happen to us collectively and can be enhanced and improved because of the astrological, planetary, vibratory positions of things around us. But each of us also has that divine power within our own bodies. You know, we have a whole system here in our bodies of prana and energy and vitality and consciousness that we can harness to attain that golden age right now. As Jesus said, didn't he? Heaven lies within, you know. It doesn't lie out there. It's in ourselves. We can find that divine state within ourselves right now. Jane and I now do our spiritual work for our foundation. All the profits that come from things like our conferences and theatres and workshops and all those exciting things now go into this foundation, which ultimately has the long-term plan of building centres in the UK and maybe around the world one day. But meanwhile, we've been doing a lot of direct spiritual work with it. We've been going out, feeding people in India, giving to the destitute, giving to beggars. We've helped feed schools, helped orphanages, and we've even given cows to older people that have no other form of income. So mediumship can change your life, but it can also help people directly in the world. So go to the links at the end and find out all about what Jane and I are trying to do. And you can do a lot just by sharing these videos on social media. Help us get the word out. Help us to do something really good in this world. Click on this picture of me to subscribe to our channel and see all of our latest videos as soon as they're published. Or click on this next video for more of our stuff.